Thank you for attending today's ceremony in remembrance of September 11th. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge several of our guests. United States Congressman Bishop, State Senator Marty Noland, State Representative Michael Weber, Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson, City of Rochester Hills Mayor Brian K. Barnett, City of Rochester Hills Council Vice President Stephanie Burita, and Council members Dr. Susan Boyer, Dale Hetrick, and Jim Kubicina. I'd also like to acknowledge our emergency service partners from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and the City of Rochester Fire. We now please rise and join the national anthem.
Come in, attention!
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce United States Congressman Bishop.
Thank you, sir. There are moments in everyone's life that are so soul-stirring that we can remember the exact time and place we were when it happened. September 11, 2001 was one of those memories for most of us. We remember the unconscionable video, those horrific images as we stood helplessly before our television sets and watched in shock and disbelief as the events unfolded, live time right in front of us. We had waves of sorrow, fear, and even anger as we realized at some point in time that our country was under attack. Yes, we'll never forget those images. There's no way. They are permanently branded on our memory. But what we'll remember the most is not the flood of victims running away, but the many who charged forward right into harm's way to save their brothers and sisters and all of humanity. We'll never forget how the country united. Our strength, our unshakable resolve. I personally remember all the flags. I don't know if you remember that, but the flags draped over the overpasses. They were everywhere, attached to cars, affixed to these beautiful trucks. All in honor of those who died, their friends and families, and for the heroes who in all too many of the cases gave their lives to save their friends, their family, and not strangers, but fellow Americans. Today we gather to remember 9/11. Appropriately, we do so at the Rochester Fire Station. surrounded by our hometown heroes, all of whom have taken an oath and dedicated their lives to serve and protect. We pray for each and every one of you, that you may go forward in your work every day in safety. We pray for your families who watch you leave every morning and worry about you. You are our heroes. Today we are reminded that we must never forget the first responders, police and firemen and women who did charge forward in the face of imminent danger. We will never forget the unity and the resolve of this country. We weathered that storm, and we will do so again in the future. Today, I am reminded that we live in the best country in the world. May God bless the United States of America, our home sweet home. Thank you. And on behalf of the United States Congress, I come today bearing, insignificant as it is, a tribute from the United States Congress to the Rochester Hills Fire Department for your dedication and service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce State Senator Marty Noland.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts. When I was younger, I remember older adults saying how everyone remembered the exact moment they heard President Kennedy had been killed. I truly didn't fully understand that expression until 9/11. The news burned the moment into our collective memory. For me, it's a memory that I'll never forget. I remember where I was. It was part of my morning ritual working out at the YMCA, and so forever I will never forget where I was on that day. Like many of you, you probably had those same memories. In that instant, learning of 9/11, we experienced several emotions at the same time as a nation. One, shock. How could this happen on American soil? Up to that moment, the evil in the world had been kept at a distance. We could choose to engage it or not to. Now there was no choice. It was thrust upon us here in our homeland, forcing us to change our interaction within our borders as it relates to security. A great inconvenience, but important nonetheless. The second emotion was sadness. Nearly 3,000 of our fellow Americans had suddenly been killed, their families instantly shattered. Children no longer had a mother or father. The guiding force in their lives was suddenly gone forever. A third emotion was anger. We were united as a country in our anger and a desire to see that justice be done. The final emotion was love. As we saw the courage of our first responders, it reminded us of the greatness of our people. The firefighters, police officers, paramedics, and average citizens running towards danger to serve their fellow Americans. All of these emotions experienced at once are the hot iron that burned the moment of 9/11 into our memories. I will never forget, we will never forget, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce State Representative Michael Weber.
Thank you for having me today, and thank you to everybody that's taken the time out of their schedule to remember today. I can't believe it's been 15 years already, and as the previous speakers have said, we can all think about where we were that day, remember where we were that day. For me, in terms of serving the greater Rochester area in the Michigan House of Representatives, it's an honor every single day to step on that floor. It was particularly an honor this past Thursday because we held our 9/11 ceremony with first responders across the entire state of Michigan. And Chief Canto joined me last year. Had folks from the Rochester Fire Department join me this year. And it was time to reflect on what first responders do for us every single day. And we also then took time to remember some of our first responders and military personnel from the state of Michigan that we've lost in the last year, and to think about how they've paid the ultimate sacrifice like those first responders did during 9/11. And so every single day, you know, certainly my family's been touched and has been served by our first responders here at the Rochester Hills Fire Department. And I think about my time on the city council and obviously our current city council, the resources and the attention that our city and our city government puts into making sure that we have an excellent fire department and EMS service. That's really important. And the only other thing that I think about when I think about 9/11, and some of the other speakers talked about it too, is the unity that we had as a country. And if we can think about anything, particularly during this presidential election year, I know it's very hard to do that, but if we can kind of get back to that place as a country, I think it's incumbent upon the leaders in our community, the leaders in the nation to get us back moving in the right direction and not be such a divided nation. So that's what I think about. I think about the courage our first responders have, and then this ideal that hopefully one day we can get back to being a united country again. So I appreciate it, and thank you for being here today.
Now I'd like to introduce Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson.
Thank you, Chief. And pardon that grand entrance. 4 years ago, I had a fairly horrific accident, and I'm still recovering. I come to the conclusion, however, over these last few years, that your bones don't heal as fast when you're 32. 15 years ago today, 17 individuals with close ties to Michigan perished in the World Trade Center, along with 3,000 other persons on the 9/11 terror attacks, including in that loss of life with firefighters, police officers, and first responders. I personally know the family of one of the victims. He was a 23-year-old boy, was excited to be in the World Trade Center. He emailed his father, who's a close friend of mine, about starting the day's work, and of course that was the last message they got. It was hard to even have a funeral for him because they couldn't find even a fingernail. The heat was so intense that everybody was just immediately incendiarized, and I can't imagine the grief of losing your son in that situation. On the other hand, yes, I can, because I lost my boy 2 years later. It was this attack on us was one of the worst days in our history, but it was also one of the best days if you stop back and look at it. I say that because the world got to see what we're made of. They saw our mettle, our resolve. They saw the spirit of America on display, along with the first responders. They had to marvel at the courage of these individuals. Where everyone else, you heard this phrase today already, while everybody else was running away, they were running toward it. And the important point about that story is nobody hesitated. They ran because that was their duty. And while we tragically lost 3,000 Americans that day, the first responders at least helped save that many, if not more. Everybody below the 83rd floor got out. Everybody above the 83rd floor perished. We honor Michigan's fallen heroes on our government campus, where I'm from, up in Pontiac, by placing their names on the Fallen Heroes Memorial put in place by my friend Mike Bishop. We also drape a large American flag over the courthouse. If you drive by, you'll see on the west wing the 30 by 60 foot flag that drapes the building. And we've been doing this every year since the 10th anniversary of 9/11. We have draped the flag of the courthouse to remember those people who perished, including the brave first responders who ran, as they say, at the danger. I don't know about you, after seeing all that happen that day and ever since the last 15 years, I don't know about you, but when I see a flag, I don't feel like sitting or kneeling. I feel like standing and placing my hand over my heart. So, to you first responders who can hear me, behind me and in front, and all those who came and worked with you, thank you for what you did and thank you for what you're doing, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Mayor Brian K. Barnett.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Lots of other things you could be doing on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, but you've chosen to spend some time here in remembering and joining with us to honor the memory of this important day. I thank my fellow elected officials who are here, our city council, the men and women wearing many different uniforms here today, and to the residents who've joined us. Thank you. You're a really important part of this ceremony because the men and women who wear the uniform need to know that they're doing it for a reason. And for those of you who are here today for no other reason except to show support, we thank you. Many of the other speakers who've gone before me have talked about that day, and it's often hard to believe that it's been 15 years ago this morning that we witnessed this horrible nightmare unfold. That wherever we were, you remember it well. You know the feelings you had of shock, of horror, turning to anger, sadness for some if you knew folks involved. Were channeled into patriotism eventually as our nation moved forward together as one in the days that followed. We were awakened in more ways than one that day, weren't we? In the wake of one of the darkest days of our nation, we celebrated that patriotism in true American style, flooded our streets and flooded our homes. A newfound and much deserved appreciation for those who wear the uniform and those who serve our country as police officers, firefighters, and first responders was also awakened. We became acutely aware that times had changed, that no longer could we sit from the comfort of our living rooms and watch terrible events unfold overseas and feel somewhat insulated, that those terrible events could happen in American cities. Today we remember the victims and continue to pray for those families of 9/11. I watched their gathering earlier today in downtown Manhattan. To those who lost fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, co-workers, friends, college acquaintances, just people that they knew. We'll never forget and will continue to hold their memories in our hearts forever. But today we also pivot to honor the men and women of the United States military who serve and protect our country, those currently serving, those that have served, and certainly those that over the course of our 200 plus years have paid the ultimate sacrifice for protecting the freedoms that we enjoy today to gather together in a public space to remember. Today we equally honor the brave men and women who serve as our emergency responders in cities, towns, and rural communities across America, and right here in Rochester Hills. To the men and women behind me and behind you, who each and every day don't know what the itinerary will hold, but place themselves in danger to help us realize and enjoy the quality of life we have here in our community. We appreciate and thank them for their courage and their commitment. We're gathered here today in Rochester Hills to rededicate ourselves, to rekindle that spirit, to renew that common purpose, and to recommit our thinking, our minds, our hearts to the honorable, the true, the selfless, and the courageous. The spirit of nearly 3,000 individuals lives on through ceremonies like this across our country. Behind me there's a memorial, a piece of the wreckage from one of the Twin Towers. And this symbol, while small, has incredible symbolism. Symbolizes the spirit of those lives lost on 9/11, and more importantly, as we've talked about today, the ability for us to thank to remember and to honor the firefighters, police officers, EMS professionals, and certainly our military who serve our country to protect us from that ever happening again. May God bless each of you, certainly the men and women in uniform, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Chief Chaplain Lloyd Hanton of the Detroit Fire Department.
Let us pray together. Father of all mankind, we remember the first time we heard the news. We recall the first time we saw those images. We remember the way our thoughts and prayers were with those families who lost loved ones. Our thoughts and prayers are with them again today. We remember those who survived. We recall their heartbreaking stories. We remember that their lives are forever scarred by those moments. Our thoughts and prayers are with them again today. May all of us remember with love and compassion that day. May we grieve with those who still mourn and share memories with those who cannot forget. May we draw strength from those who bravely responded and gave their lives to save others. May we stand with strangers who became neighbors that day and remember their generosity and hospitality. Above all, God, may we remember your faithfulness and learn to trust you in your unfailing love. Amen.
Take that picture, please. The signal 5555 has been used in the City of New York firehouses since 1870. It signals the death, generally of a colleague, and tells firefighters to lower the flag to half-staff. Before computers, dispatchers communicated with firehouses using a series of rings and gave the location of a blaze by a code assigned to the nearest intersection. A firehouse watchman had to monitor the bell and decipher the message on paper. These days, a watchman monitors a computer screen, which gives the codes for the intersection, the address, and the type of incident. The bells have long been disabled, but a 5555 signal is still used. To this day, the code still has a meaning. A dispatcher will say on the radio, "A signal 5555 has been transmitted, and it's with the deepest regret that a fire department announces the death of a firefighter." Today, the Rochester Hills Fire Department will sound 5555 for all members of the City of New York Fire Department, the New York City Police Department, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey who lost their lives 15 years ago today. Rest easy, brothers and sisters. You now please stand for the honoring of the colors.
Company, attention.
Company. Order. Detail. Iron. Order. Halt.
Thank you. You may be seated. "15 years ago today, 2,977 individuals representing 90 countries lost their lives. The financial firm Cantor Fitzgerald on the 103rd floor of the North Tower alone lost 658 employees that day. Long after the dust settled in Lower Manhattan, thousands of volunteers, rescue workers, New York City residents, and all Americans are still feeling the effect, not only in their hearts, but in their minds and bodies as well. While the impact of 9/11 is nearly impossible to measure, just now are we beginning to understand the scope of physical and mental effects of that disaster. Today, the World Trade Center Health Program monitors more than 48,000 police officers, hard hat workers, utility workers, and others who worked at Ground Zero. The New York City Fire Department has its own 9/11 health program with over 16,000 members being monitored or cared for. And since 2001, the federal government has listed more than 50 types of cancer believed to be related to the toxic smoke and dust of September 11th. This day is not only of great sadness for the country and the world, but holds a special place in the heart of emergency services personnel. As the sun set on September 11, 2001, 343 New York City firefighters, 23 New York City police officers, 37 Port Authority police officers, and 8 private EMS workers had paid the supreme sacrifice while operating at Box 8087 Vassy and Church Streets, also known as the World Trade Center. At 7:59 a.m., American Flight 11, with a crew of 11 and 76 passengers, was flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46. The North Tower collapsed at 10:28 a.m. after burning for 102 minutes. United Airlines Flight 175, with a crew of 9 and 51 passengers, was flown into the South Tower of the World Trade Center at 9:03 a.m. The South Tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m. after burning for 56 minutes. American Flight 77, with a crew of 6 and 53 passengers, was flown into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. And United Airlines Flight 93, with a crew of 7 and 33 passengers, crashed into the ground near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. after passengers attempted to subdue the hijackers. As firefighters, police officers, and emergency personnel responded to the event of September 11th, it was apparent prior to their arrival that numerous people were trapped and or dying, and the task in front of them was likely going to be the most difficult they ever encountered, and not once did they waver in their sense of duty. On September 11th, the New York City Fire Department responded with hundreds of members to the epicenter of the disaster at the World Trade Center. Brothers and sister firefighters ascended the stairwell of the towers, knowing above them a fire raged out of control and hundreds of occupants were trapped. Systems designed to help protect the building were inoperable, and members found themselves in the middle of a fight with the odds stacked against them, but continued to push on and never return. I'd like to share a story of a couple of those individuals. Firefighters like Chief Oriole Palmer of Battalion 7. At breakfast time, Oriole Palmer would pop into a Rascal CD and do goofy dances around his Valley Stream kitchen, singing "It's a Beautiful Morning." The kids laughed and called him the Music Man. The New York City Fire Battalion Chief, who had tough growing up in the Bronx, would take the neighborhood kids out fishing on days off just because he'd never gotten to do that himself as a boy. He was determined to teach all the kids stickball too, an almost lost art he mastered when he was their age. And when he and his wife were invited to a Halloween toga party, a white sheet wasn't enough for Chief Palmer. He'd wear a pink one and put heels onto the sandals. On their refrigerator, Debbie Palmer still keeps the saying her husband taped there before he led his men of the Manhattan Battalion to the World Trade Center on September 11th. Live while you're alive. 16 members of Battalion 7 were lost along with Chief Palmer. Palmer became known to hundreds of co-workers over the past years as an instructor for firefighters studying for promotion exams. He also used his skills to write articles for the New York City Fire Department newspaper. Firefighters like Lieutenant Glenn Wilkinson. Lieutenant Wilkinson was in charge of Engine Company 238 in Brooklyn. On September 11th, he had ordered his men out of the South Tower and then discovered one man missing. Wilkinson went back into the building to rescue the missing firefighter. Wilkinson did not make it out. All his men survived. Wilkinson's responsible act made his wife Margaret proud, but also made her angry. Proud because her husband refused to leave a firefighter behind. Angry because her husband is not here to grow old with her and to watch their 3 children grow up to become successful young adults. And that was hard to accept in the beginning, that he had actually gotten out and went back in, said his wife, known to family and friends as Margie. Raising the children alone wasn't easy, Margie said. She wished her husband, who loved being a father, was there to share the many moments of joy of being a parent. All the things he loved to do, being a father was definitely number one. One time, Margie dropped her son, Craig, off at lacrosse practice. She told him she would return to watch him play after she dropped off his brother. "It's all Dad's. Mom, you don't have to come back," said Margie, recalling what her son said. It broke her heart. "I said, Craig, I am all that you have." When her daughter Kelsey graduated from college, Margie could tell that she was doing her best to hold it together. She was ready to fall apart. I knew that she missed him. Kelsey has now graduated as a teacher in Brooklyn. Their son Craig is a senior in Ithaca College, and Kevin plans to attend the American University in Washington, D.C. The fire service profession has been defined by honor and courage, a profession that requires something different from the average citizen. The fire service finds special people with the courage to do the job, and then focuses and harnesses this courage into firefighting and rescue skills. The fire service is based on the concept of teamwork and serving with honor and respect. Chief Edward Croker of the New York City Fire Department wrote, "I have no ambition in this world but one, and that is to be a firefighter. The position may in the eyes of some appear to be a lowly one, but we who know the work which a firefighter has to do believe theirs is a noble calling. Our proudest moments is to save lives. Under the impulse of such thoughts, the nobility of the occupation thrills us and stimulates us to deeds of daring, even of supreme sacrifice." He also wrote, "Firefighters are going to get killed. When they join the department, they face that fact. When an individual becomes a firefighter, their greatest act of bravery has been accomplished. What they do after all that is in the line of work. They were not thinking of getting killed when they went where death lurked. They went there to put the fire out and got killed. Firefighters do not regard themselves as heroes because they do what the business required." On September 11th, 2001, members of fire, police, and emergency services did exactly what the business required, and they paid the supreme sacrifice. We, as members of the emergency service profession, should never forget our fallen brothers and sisters who went above and beyond the call of duty and have demonstrated the utmost honor and respect.
Again, I'd like to thank you for attending this remembrance today. I ask you to join us in our apparatus bay for some refreshments. Thank you.